All right, we're live on Facebook. We're live in here. Hello, everyone.
Yeah. Let me just give a quick introduction to like who you are, Mackenzie. So yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us again. I'm with Canopy. So well, my name is Simran, and I'm with Canopy. And Canopy is a co-working space that's based in San Francisco. Today we've got Mackenzie Barth, and I'm super excited to hear her talk about regenerative leadership. I will put our website in the chat box so you can check us out, check out our co-working space, and we'll also be opening this up to Q&A. So you can go ahead and digitally raise your hand or add it in the chat box below, and I will send them over to Mackenzie. All right, all you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's weird that I'm like talking to myself, but I see all your little names here. So I'll just pretend like your faces are here. Thank you for joining. I am really happy that you're here because this work is like a deep personal passion of mine. And the fact that you're here means to me that you are interested at least a little bit in trying to incorporate a new way of leadership into your work, which I think is so needed today more than ever before. And I'm excited to explain to you a little bit about what regenerative leadership means, kind of from a high level, and then we'll go into how you can actually start to practice some of this in your everyday life. But first, I wanted to just check in, and if you could type in the chat where you are calling in from, and also what industry you're in, or what work you do, or what your role is. I would just love to get a little lay of the land of who we have on here. And I'm in Boulder, Colorado, where I moved 2 days ago. And I'm thoroughly enjoying it. We have some Minnesota. Food media. Food media was my last company. San Francisco and co-working. Cimarron, Spain. Oh, nice. Got Joe. Hey, Joe. Amazing. San Francisco. Cool. So why I'm so excited about regenerative leadership is a few reasons. I think we can all probably agree that we are going through this unique time where there's a lot of things starting to be shown to us that we didn't see before. And specifically in the business world, there's a lot of things that are starting to break down with major companies. And also within, I think on a personal level, all of us are starting to ask ourselves questions that we haven't asked before about how do we want to work? How do we want to live? How do we want to use this time that we have alive to improve the world or improve the lives of people in our communities? And I feel like regenerative leadership is this path out of this really dark time into a future where we can all thrive and work and live in a harmonious way with each other and with nature. And now I'm getting this like crazy sun streak, which is kind of cool. But I'll share my story a little bit, and then I'll show you guys some slides to walk us through the presentation. I'll share why this has come up for me and why I'm so like passionate about doing this in my own work. My background is in the startup world in New York City. I was in food media, running a digital media company called Spoon University, and I started the company originally out of college, moved to New York, went through an accelerator program, raised venture capital money, grew the team, worked my ass off, and then sold the business, and kind of for the first time woke up and was like, wait, what just happened? Like, I felt like I was in this swirl, and I had lost myself in that process. I realized that I'd become kind of this tense, controlling leader in this space that I really wanted to just enjoy because of all these outside pressures that I felt. And I took the next year and a half off to travel, to get back to myself. I spent a lot of time in Central America and South America, spent most of my days outdoors, and really found what life was all about, which was just this: we are humans, we are alive, can enjoy this life. And then when quarantine started, I was trying to figure out how. I came back home to Illinois, and I was trying to figure out, how do I merge these two sides of me, this lover of nature that I could go live in a jungle for the rest of my life, and this businesswoman who loves to build things and loves to create things. And it felt like these two pieces were so far away from each other. And then I realized that was precisely the problem, is that business and nature are so far apart, and they need to be brought closer together. And so through this work of regenerative leadership, I've been able to start to rewrite the way that I work, the way that I create things, in honor and in love for the natural world around us, which we are a part of. And so I'm going to kind of walk through like where we were and where we're going. And then I think by the end, you'll start to see how it makes sense for us to start to step into regenerative leadership as a new mindset and new paradigm for the way that we can work moving forward, to really create the lives that we want that are supportive of everybody. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So I already went through these, kind of. Okay, so here's an overview. We're going to go through like this old way of doing business, the regenerative way of doing business, what regenerative leadership looks like, and then how you can become a regenerative leader yourself. So this old way of doing business. Well, before we get into it, I wanted to back up and just, as I've been doing this work, I've learned a lot about like the roots of American capitalism and where they come from. And the first kind of major mega industry in the US was the cotton industry. And this was the beginning of management layers starting to occur. This was when Africans were brought over and enslaved and were turned into machines, and their output of cotton picked was measured to the ounce, and they were punished if they didn't pick enough, and they were not rewarded. They were just, nothing happened if they did the same amount. There was just all of this kind of like controlling mindset. There was a complete destroying of all of this land for monocropping of cotton. And you see this kind of very dominating culture of capitalism, of more money at the expense of all the people who are working for you. And while this feels like it's so long ago, and in many ways our society has evolved, there are still a lot of roots that exist today in business. And I just wanted to like look at some of these for a minute. And as I look at these, like some of you may be in the startup world, some of you might have your own company, some of you may have work in a corporation or have a corporate background. This old way of doing business is pervasive at every level because it's ingrained in our culture. This is how American capitalism was built. It's ingrained in us, whether we are aware of it or not. And so the invitation in regenerative leadership is to start to become aware of these ways that are starting to influence, that have always really influenced the world in a negative way, that we can start to transform. So start to kind of notice if these things, which I think sometimes feel really big and like these are just for big oil companies, it's not actually true. It's like we suffer from these too. So the old way of doing business is you're putting profit above everything else. This is like the major driving force of all business today. There's an authoritative management style. So in order to control the business, managers and leaders think that you can use either performance enhancements like promotions, raises, bonuses, or negative feedback, firing people, threatening people to kind of control behavior in a certain way. There's teams, the way that those organizations are structured today, they're very siloed. The teams are just generally working within their own areas, and then maybe you have managers who are talking to each other, but the systems of communication are pretty isolated. It's very much driven by short-term goals. Quarterly goals, monthly goals, annual goals. Even some of the, like, there was something I read about, like the top CEOs at the top Fortune 500 companies, they usually don't even last at the companies for more than 5 years. This is their tenure at a company. So they're only looking at a 5-year plan instead of the long term. There's this idea that there's a homogenous or one right perspective, because there's this kind of belief that you have to control the business to be able to have a good output. If there's any other perspective that threatens what this idea of success looks like, it starts to threaten the potential success of the company. So everyone has to kind of fall in line and conform. And it really rewards this like left brain, logical decision-making rationale. So it's leave your emotions at home. We are here to make decisions with our brains. And what this really is like a mechanistic way of working. And you can see this even appear in the words that are used, especially like in the tech community that I was a part of in New York. People use words like pivot, churn, leverage, scale, maneuver, transition. Like these are words to describe machines. And words create our reality, right? Like, so if we're using words that describe machines to apply to people and to businesses, you can imagine what might happen. It comes at a big cost. So this way of doing business, which has been around for a while, is exploiting all the natural resources on our planet. It creates these highly competitive, egocentric work environments where people are more and more stressed out, anxious, burnt out, disengaged. And this can happen like even as you might be building your own business, you just fall into some patterns of, wait, I'm feeling competitive with other businesses, or I'm feeling burnt out, or I'm feeling stressed. And it also leads to rigid, inflexible systems. So if you're creating an organization that is powered by control, and you don't want to shift, you don't want to move, you want to dominate in your area, it actually makes the organization very rigid and vulnerable to external change or collapse. So we're seeing that happening a lot now with COVID. Certain big mega companies are not able to be flexible and adapt. They need to be bailed out, or they go bankrupt. And so these are some of like the real serious costs of doing business in the old way. So here's the truth. Businesses are not machines. We treat them like them, but the reality is that businesses are alive. Businesses are actually living systems made up of humans, which are alive, coming together to create something. And if we can start to adopt this mentality that businesses are actually alive, we can start to shift our entire way of relating to them. So this is the regenerative way. Regenerative meaning we're creating new life, regenerating new life. And this is seeing businesses as a living system. I'll just read a couple of these. So business is a natural extension of people who build them. It's not a machine, it's an extension of humans. Businesses are part of a vibrant, interconnected ecosystem. They're not actually operating in a silo. These businesses create space for people's natural intelligence to express itself, which we'll get into in a little bit. Diversity and collaboration are key. This is not a nice to have or an ethical thing. This is a key component of having a thriving business. If you look in nature, any healthy ecosystem has a lot of diversity. It's the same thing with a company. These businesses prioritize the well-being of people and the planet. It's not just about profit anymore. And they're able to change, adapt, and evolve based on changing conditions. So we are living in a time right now where things are very volatile. We don't know where they're going to go. We have no control over where they're going to go. So the businesses that will be successful in the future are the ones that can change and adapt and evolve based on whatever is happening around it. And this is what really optimizes it for long-term success. When you can operate as a living organism, as a living system, you can mold to whatever is happening around you. You can dynamically change and shift to fit the new reality. And this is what long-term success looks like. It's looking long-term instead of at the next month or 2 months. So one metaphor that I really like to compare kind of the old way to the new way is the old way is like woodworking. Like you take a block of wood, maybe you have an idea for what you want it to be, and you're whittling it down. And then you have this static block of wood and you have a pile of sawdust. And that's kind of the old degenerative way. You think you can control this, but then what if we started to actually think of businesses as gardens, and we as business leaders are gardeners? We are, instead of trying to whittle something down or control something, we're actually creating the environment for life to thrive. And we can plant the seeds of ideas and allow them to grow, and they have their own timeline. You can't actually yell at plants to grow. You can only nurture them into existence. So if we take this more nurturing stance when it comes to the work that we do, we actually find that it can enliven us as well as enlivening the work that we're bringing. Here's a quote that I like. You never change things by fighting against existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the old model obsolete. So it's funny that I use this quote now, because this new model that I'm proposing is actually the oldest model of all. This is the Earth from the beginning of time model. It's just this new model to apply in the business world. We can't keep making little tweaks to the way that things are working in business today. We actually need like a complete overhaul, and aligning more with nature, which has been around for billions of years, is the way to do it. So that's kind of like the high level, what it means to go from the old way to the new way. And then when it comes to actual leadership, like what is it that we need to bring forward if we're going to be leaders of this movement? And just to kind of paint the picture, I'll read from the book Regenerative Leadership, which is what really sparked my inspiration for all of this. He describes it so well, the author Giles. He says, regenerative business enriches life. It enriches ourselves, our customers, and the wider stakeholder ecosystem. Regenerative business transforms our role and purpose from a what's in it for me approach to a mindset of collaboration, co-creativity, and contribution. Regenerative leadership brings vitality and well-being to our living system. In doing so, we wake up to what it means to be fully human. And that is kind of like a key cornerstone of this, is we get to be fully human, not just the partial work humans that we've been before, but fully human. And that actually is best for business. So to recap, regenerative leaders do not have to have all the answers. Again, this is kind of like this old mindset. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to control anything. You don't have to figure it out on your own. You don't have to separate work and life. You don't have to imitate other companies. And you don't actually have to feel burdened by strict goals and deadlines. You can relax. I find this such a relief that we don't actually have to do this. That was the way that I was running my last business. And I thought that was the only way to do it. And I am now joyfully discovering there is a new way to do it. And that is by first letting go of this fear that you need to control everything, this fear that something's not going to work. We have to, this is actually quite hard to do, but like letting go of the fear and then needing to control everything. And then you can welcome in creativity and play. You can accept the change and ebbs and flows of business as a natural part. You can lead with authenticity, heart openness, and self-awareness. You listen, sense, and feel into the company needs. You set a clear purpose and use values to guide decisions, and you surrender to being of service. And this last piece has been so critical for me in the times where I start to feel my ego coming up of like, oh, I have to do something perfectly. I have to do something quickly. I have to do something yesterday. When I can surrender to being in service, that I am just giving my gifts to the betterment of my customers, my people, whatever, like that's the energy that regenerative leaders carry. And so this requires a full metamorphosis mindset. As I've said, this old way of doing business is ingrained in our culture so deeply. It's so deep, we sometimes can't even see it. And as I've been building my new business, I'm going through this metamorphosis process of trying to become a regenerative leader. I'm starting to notice when are the times where I stress myself out and try to release them. When are the times where I feel like I need to move faster and try to reorient. So we're in this chrysalis moment right now where we are transforming the old ways that we've been doing things and bringing it into a new reality where we can all thrive. So these are the 4 areas that if you can embrace regenerative leadership that you start to see come alive. First is yourself. And this is really where it starts, which is why I'm talking about like the leadership side of it, is we have to start regenerating ourselves first in order to be able to regenerate our businesses. So this is really doing inner work. This is maintaining your integrity. This is prioritizing your authenticity and your aliveness and your health above everything else, and trusting that when you do that, all these other pieces come alive too. So without that integrity in yourself, you can't bring your full self to the relationships, your culture, or your larger systems. Second layer is reviving relationships. So you look at nature and it's made up of all reciprocal relationships where there are people too, but all these organisms working together to cooperate with one another, to give each other nutrients. It's incredible what goes on in nature. And we too embody this in our relationships, but can like fine tune them to serve us even more. Also, the next layer is the community and culture. So through relationships, you get to build a culture of regeneration, a culture of aliveness. And then larger than that is ecosystems. So it's not only your business that you get to enliven, but it's every part that your business touches. If you think about, you have a supplier, let's say, and you want to help your supplier become aware of their regenerative practices. Like you can actually have an influence on the larger sphere. And this is how we start to really transform the face of business forever. And this is a framework that has helped me. Just a simple question when you're trying to make a decision in reorienting to the regenerative way is, what is the regenerative thing to do? What is going to bring more life, more flow, more abundance? And the self, this is asking yourself, does this decision make me feel more alive? You know, does spending 3 more hours on the computer trying to put a presentation together, is that what's going to really be the best for the business? Or do you need to take care of yourself? How does this action bring more life into a relationship? How does this decision allow more life to flow within the organization? And how does this decision lead to more life thriving in the world? So these are, I invite you to, when you're making decisions, start to ask this question and just see, even if you're not making the regenerative decision all the time, it's okay, but just start to become aware of when you're making a decision for life and for aliveness and regeneration, and when you're making a decision from an obligation, from a commitment, from a need or something that actually doesn't feel so good for you, which is more of a kind of a fear mindset that we're moving out of, and really just start to orient more around regenerative decision making in your life and in your business too. So I want to talk about embodying regenerative leadership. So that was kind of like theory, and now I want to talk about more, I guess there's some more theory in here, but more things that you can actually do today. So I've mentioned this a little bit. This is based on the principle that when you embrace your aliveness, your business comes alive. Our businesses are extensions of us. Our work is an extension of us. If we are not in our most alive state, we cannot possibly produce the best outcome for our companies. And so there's this beautiful idea called activating our supernature, which incorporates all the different elements of the human into everything that we do. So if you look on the left side, it separates out rational from intuitive, emotional, and somatic pieces of information. We basically have 4, probably way more, but like at least 4 major sources of information that we can draw from. And in the business world, we've mostly been using our rational minds. This has been the predominant way of doing business. And I was guilty of this at my last company. I remember, I don't know if I said it or I just thought it, but I remember thinking, there's no room for emotions in the workplace. Like, people can leave their stuff at home and come to work and do the work. And this is impossible, right? Like this is like an illusion. You can't actually leave your emotions at work. They're in your body when you show up at work. And so to create an environment for yourself and for a team where it actually integrates all of these different parts, where it allows you to move through emotions, because if you don't move through emotions, you just get blocked and you can't work well if you're blocked all the time. It allows you to use your intuition as an amazing source of information that we should be relying on way more than we are in a business setting. Like, sometimes things don't rationally make sense, but we have a deep gut feeling about them, and we need to honor that at work too. And then we have somatic responses as well, which is like our body sending us messages. So if you get a pit in your stomach before you have a conversation with somebody, what is that telling you? If you get nauseous about hearing something, if you get goosebumps at hearing something, like there's all these different ways our body is responding to external stimuli that we can also start to welcome into the work environment to really just take us to the next level. Like, these are all of our human superpowers that we have access to that are not brought into the workplace enough. And if we can start to integrate these, we can be operating at such a high level and feel so much clarity within us too, because we're not muting any of these parts. And this is another expression of this kind of dominating culture that we're moving out of, because even our rational minds, when our rational minds are dominating, they're dominating the other parts, and then you have imbalance. So it's all about integrating and bringing more into balance within ourselves. And you can see this line. This is the crossing the threshold, which is a little bit like that metamorphosis that we're going through right now. It's letting go of that rational dominance. It's accepting that this is kind of a death and a rebirth happening. So this happens all the time in nature, is things die, more things grow, things die, more things grow. And we need to be willing to let go of this old way of operating and acknowledge it for what it was and getting us to where it is, and just say goodbye so that we can create space for this entirely new way of leading. This also requires us to surrender a little bit too. Like, if you get super deep into it, which I'm trying to do, and it is scary, like these are totally different ways of being than we are used to in a business context. You have to kind of let go of having control, having predictions, having plans, having timelines for everything, and surrender a little bit to the fact that you might not know how you're going to get there, but you know at least where you want to go, and just trust that that's going to be good for you. And then once you can do that, you really welcome in this new way of being and get excited about the possibilities. I always think of just any new thing in life as just one of the many adventures that we can try. And so to approach it with this energy of like curiosity and excitement, for me has been a way to also aid me in starting to like rewrite these old ways of operating. And basically it's getting out of your own way, which is pretty hard. Practice, practice, practice. Yeah. This is the key. This is not easy stuff. I mentioned a little bit, but I'm practicing it myself every single day. When I catch myself in those moments where I'm not fully feeling it, I'm not fully alive, I'm not energetic, like these are the moments to me that I need to start to redirect. And so it's a constant practice. And so there are a few things that you can be practicing today, tomorrow, and every moment. And one is creativity. So if you think about the goal as a gardener of your work is to enliven the system, right? You need to keep it fresh and flowing. Creativity is a way to do that. Like when we feel not creative, when we feel stuck or blocked, that's not enlivening our system for things to come through. So bringing more creativity into the workplace is an essential part of regenerative leadership. And you can do things like in big ways, prioritize things like drawing, going into nature, dancing, singing, cooking, like simple joys in life, right? But it can even be in just like small moment to moment things too, like changing anything. If you're feeling stuck, get your laptop, go into a different room. If you're drinking water, go drink tea. Like just changing little things like that switches something in our brains to like spark up new creative inspiration. And I found that the moments where I'm feeling stuck and I actually step away from work and prioritize my creativity, that's when I get the actual insight that I need to move forward that maybe I wouldn't have been able to get if I just sat there at my laptop the whole time. You can use this in your problem solving too. So if you're feeling stuck in a problem and you're used to solving it a certain way, just as an experiment, try it a different way. Like approaching business as this experiment, this creative process is a way to keep us alive, keep our systems enlivened, and to have a little bit more lightness with everything that we do. So it's not so heavy, like, oh, it has to work, it has to be perfect. We're gonna get creative with it. We're gonna have some fun. And then prioritizing your personal flow. So I wanted to show this graph has been helpful for me in understanding how to stay in your flow zone and how to optimize your work environment so you can stay in this channel. So you have skills on the bottom and challenges on the top. And if you are very skilled and it's a low challenge, you're going to be bored and you're not going to be in flow. So this is an opportunity to look at all the tasks that you're doing and try to figure out where are the tasks that are really boring me and how can I maybe hand them off to somebody else, delegate that task to somebody else who maybe has a lower skill so it wouldn't be boring for them and they can stay in their flow zone. And then on the top, you have anxiety, which is when the challenge is really high and your skill is not so high and you feel anxious about the task because you just can't do it. And then when you feel that, that's an opportunity to look at, okay, how do I get back into the flow channel? Does it mean that I need to get support? Does it mean that I need to learn a new skill? Does it mean that I need to advance in a certain way so that I can get back into that channel? So that's another thing you can start to do in your everyday, hour to hour when you're working. Notice if you're fluctuating between anxiety, boredom, or flow, and try to orient your workday around flow. So there's another key part of nature that I want to talk about, which is the natural rhythms, seasons that exist everywhere, right? Like there's winter, there's spring, summer, fall. This happens every single year. It never stops. And we also experience these seasons as humans too. We are not separate from these seasons. And so our businesses, therefore, are the same. And there's this way of doing business in the old way, which is grow, 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 grow. You should always be growing. And if you're not always growing, something is wrong. And then it's like, oh my God, when something's wrong, it feels very stressful and we can't handle it. So instead, we can adopt this natural rhythm of this is just a natural part of life. There's winter, which is when in nature, it's dark, it's cold, there's not a lot of life happening. And same in the business, there are down moments for sure. It could happen daily, it could happen hourly, it could happen over courses of months. And this is an opportunity to go inwards, to reflect, to recalibrate. You can actually start to use the winter time as a key part of your business. Like, thank God we have winter so that everything can store its energy so that new things can be birthed in the next season. It's the same thing with your business and with your personal life too. You'll notice you have ups and downs for sure. For me, over the last few months, there's been serious winters and serious summers too. And to know that these cycles continue to happen allows you to like use that time in the best way possible. So then you have spring. This is where the time after the winter is like, okay, things are not going well. It's a time to recalibrate. Then it's an opportunity to plant new seeds. This is when you have new ideas. You start to bring plans to life so that in the summer, things are booming, life is happening. There's partnership, there's a lot of action happening, you're selling things, whatever it is. And then knowing that fall will come again. And so when things start to go down a little bit, it's okay because it's just fall and you're going into winter, which is a really good time to recalibrate. So really kind of acknowledging these synergies and similarities between us and nature and our businesses is such, for me, like an amazing way to get relief from this need to control or grow all the time and start to see there's a natural way that things work instead. This is, okay, so we're going to do a little exercise because I find that it's easy to get caught in our heads during the day. And this is like one of my favorite ways just to, within 5 minutes, get out of your head and just start to appreciate the world around you. Okay, we'll just get into it and then you'll see. So I'm going to invite you to just get comfortable in your seat. Close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. Just settle into your body. And now I want you to open your eyes and see 5 things in your room. Go one by one and really look at an object in the room that you're in. Notice it. Notice the colors, the shape, the texture. Really look at this object. And when you're ready, you can move on to the next object. You're going to do 5 objects total. Really notice the details. Now you're going to find 4 things that you can touch with your finger. So take your finger and run it over 4 different things and notice how it feels under your finger. What's the temperature? Is it smooth? Is it bumpy? Is it soft? Just notice. Okay, now close your eyes again, and we're going to tune into our hearing. I want you to try to find 3 things that you can hear in your environment and really listen to 3 different sounds. And now tune into your sense of smell and see if you can smell 2 different things. Just take in the smell. What does it smell like? And the last one is one thing that you can taste. Just notice what it tastes like in your mouth. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Maybe notice how things have shifted for you. If you feel more in your body, more connected to the present moment. This is what can happen when we activate our senses, when we just tune into the environment around us. And our senses are really amazing portals of information that really just help ground us into the moment. So this is it's a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 practice that you can do if you're ever feeling a little overwhelmed or just like in your head a little blocked. Just start noticing what's in your environment. And oops. Okay. Okay. One other practice for regenerative leadership is rooting down for the long run. So this is that idea again, that as regenerative leaders, we are looking long-term into the future, right? We are creating a life for ourselves and for others that we really believe in, that is not just predicated on how we're going to grow in the next month, but that's really a sustainable business. And the first element in this is knowing your purpose. And this is deep work, to really know your purpose. It's not something, maybe some of you have done this deep work. Maybe it's something that's on your mind. It's a long process, and it's also a beautiful one, because that is just part of, in my opinion, like exploring life, is knowing what is your purpose on earth, and also what is your purpose within the work that you're doing. What is the value that you can bring? How do you know that you're in full alignment with the work that you're doing? Is if you know what your purpose is, and if that is aligned with what the work is. Part of this also is developing your values. So to become a regenerative leader, you must know what matters to you, right? Like, what are you working towards? What is important to you? What does happiness look like? Having these values and acting from a place of values allows you to really root into the way that you want to operate and not be pulled around so much by what society might be telling you is right. And to feel them, to share them, and to practice them, this is to me, this is what it's all about in life. To know why you're here and to live in your values. And that once you can do that, it is such a relief, because there's not this whiplash back and forth of what other people are saying is good or bad or yesterday or future, whatever. It's just, in your core what is right for you, and that's all that really matters. And when we show up in that integrity, other people around us feel that, and it encourages them to show up in their integrity too. And that's really the key thing. Don't compromise on them. Like, don't compromise on them. And for the final tip, there's a million practices, honestly, that we could go into. I just wanted to give you guys a little taste. But one that I really want to encourage, especially during the summertime, is allowing Mother Earth to support you. So part of being a regenerative leader is tuning into nature and understanding how the natural system works, both in like outside trees and stuff, but also within our own bodies. And a really good way to do that is to actually get outdoors, get into nature, and to experience it. And earthing is a really good practice that has changed my days for sure. But there's also a lot of science too that supports what it is. The practice of earthing is literally just going outside, putting your feet in the earth, like bare feet in the earth. What's happening is that your feet are able to soak up the electrons from the earth that the earth receives from the sun. And these electrons are critical for humans in balancing all of our internal systems, and specifically with inflammation. So it helps reduce inflammation in all parts of our body, which is kind of the core of a lot of illnesses today, including depression is inflammation in the brain, diabetes, arthritis, all of these autoimmune diseases. There's a ton that is connected to inflammation. And as humans, we've gotten so disconnected from the earth, physically also, as well as mentally. But physically, we've gotten disconnected as we wear rubber-soled shoes that creates an insulator from us to be able to get the electrons of the earth. So it's a really supportive practice for your own health and well-being is to go spend time in the earth. And not to mention, when I do that, so much magic unfolds. It's like, oh wow, there's birds flying around, and what are they doing? And there's ants in their own world down here too. And there's so much to explore. And I personally learned so much from nature that I apply into my life and my business. And getting actual time, 15 to 30 minutes a day to do that, to balance your own health and spark inspiration, I think is like the best business advice ever. And it really goes back to that same idea of when we come alive, our businesses come alive. So when we are optimizing our health, we work smarter, we work clear, and we work more fully. And this is the key into stepping into a new way. So that's all the content I have. I'll open it up for questions, but just wanted to mention that there is a Facebook group that I've created around this idea called the Business Revolution. If anyone wants to join, I post a lot of like inspiration and like interesting conversation questions for people to explore how to actually bring this into their daily life. So I invite you to join that. And I'm also starting to do some leadership coaching with some select people that are kind of in the right realm. So if that is of interest to you, you can feel free to email me and we can talk about it to see if it's a good fit. I'm really excited about this work, as maybe you can tell. And if you have questions, or if you have just like want to brainstorm on stuff or just get like little advice, I'm so excited to help bring this into the world and really just help business become a very nurturing and enlivening place for everybody in the way that I know it can be. So that is all. I will stop my screen share and we can open it up to questions if anyone has some.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mackenzie. It was really nice, like hearing all of that. And it's so true. Like we need to be able to look at work and business in a different way, because obviously, I mean, I get the traditional method. It's worked for years, but it's not. People, they burn out.
Exactly, it's not sustainable long term.
Yeah, sustainable. Yeah. People burn out.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions? So when we were talking earlier, you were saying, oh, it looks like Yosh has a question. You want to go ahead and ask one?
Yeah, I wondered, oh my gosh, my makeup is running, sorry. I wonder, do you think that this is sort of like, the new evolution of, let's say the triple bottom line, people, profit, planet, or this idea of conscious capitalism, this is kind of the next place or the next step? And also, do you think it's also because more females are coming into the workforce as leaders and it's just a different way of doing business? And, maybe, this, what you said is the machinist, I view it energetically as maybe more toxic masculinity, and the nurturing tends to be a more female driven way of leadership. And, I don't want to get into this like, oh, men suck type thing, but just, moving in that direction? Is that because there's more women in this workplace that's leading this, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I think to answer your first question, I do think that it is an evolution beyond the like triple bottom line. I think to me, triple bottom line feels like the next step from where we are to like get people like step by step. And now I feel like we're in a time where we need more than a little step. We need like a full system
Yeah.
reorientation. And I think that that's where this comes in. And yes, this is a very feminine way of leading. And I think that for both men and women, we've all suffered from this over masculine way of working. It's been a hyper masculine society that has cut off all these other parts for men and women. Mm-hmm. And so I think what this really is bringing back this feminine perspective into balance so that we can use all of it. Because there are very amazing parts of the masculine that are essential for business too, right? Like we don't want to discard that. We just want to take what actually serves us and what works and balance it with everything else, because that's been the imbalance, is that it's dominated. And now we need to come back into harmony, which is how nature is. You know, everything is in balance, it's in flow. And we've all practiced the masculine side. So now it's like, okay, now let's practice bringing in the feminine with it. So
and it's the idea of, I don't remember which proverb it is, but it's the idea of the wings, and that the one wing, we need the other wing as well, right? The image of the bird. And that, you know, and to clarify, it's not men and women, it's masculine energy versus feminine energy. And men have feminine energy and women have male energy too. So we're talking about perhaps like tantra energy in a business term that, you know, can coexist. We don't have to be so mechanized. We can be natural, as you say, in a way that is successful as well. So I feel very, very inspired. So thank you for this.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that.
And also just to see, you know, with everything that's happening right now with COVID, you know, the way that you conduct business is now completely changed, and it'll never go back to how it was before. You know, where people are working from home, people have like, you know, they have to kind of like make new boundaries and push back where, you know, there's no separation of like work and home life or your own personal life, and people have had to like look at themselves like, all right, how do I do it so I'm being more effective? And a lot of teams, so I'm in co-working, and I've talked to, you know, like I'm in conversation with quite a few people, and a lot of people have said like, you know, like we're still effective, we're still able to get work done, people are doing it in their own way, right? So it's about like leadership being okay, like, you know, taking on the school that you're talking about, that you're discussing, and applying it, like, you know what, people don't need to be micromanaged, and they don't need to be, it's like they're effective, they're getting work done. So it's
totally. And especially if they're like in alignment too. Yeah, they definitely don't need to be micromanaged. They're intrinsically motivated because it enlivens them to do the work, right? Yeah. Like those are the conditions. When you set up a condition where all the people that you're working with are so into what you're working on, like you won't need management anymore.
Yeah.
And then it is, to your point, like about us each trying to figure out what is the right balance with our work and life, and not making it these two separate things, but finding the way to integrate them so that they both work together. It kind of feels like we're coming into, along with like the masculine and feminine energies, it's like it's coming back into integration of all the things that we used to hold so separate. We have to figure out how to integrate them, and it's hard work. You know, it's messy and confusing, and like we've never done it before. So
I think we've never been trained to do that before.
Right. It's been so easy to like silo and just do this, but it's not working anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, like, you know, what you were saying about your emotions, there's no way, I can't separate my emotions from going to work. And also I spend most of my life at like working, right? If there's something that's going on in my home life, it's going to show up in my work life.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, for everyone. Like it's not realistic to try to separate those things, but if we can bring them together, accept it all, we can work through them, and then they don't affect us as much at work if we allow them to be. We had a couple questions.
Questions. Yeah.
Alexander asked, who are some of the leaders in the field that you are reading or listening to? So there's two that I really love. One is Giles Hutchins, who is the author of Regenerative Leadership, and also he wrote a book called The Nature of Business. I've been working with him for a bit, and he is just so wise and next level in the way that he incorporates so many different elements of life into a business and leadership context. And he does some blog posts that are really insightful to read. And then Riane Eisler is another woman that I love. She's pioneering this idea called partnerism, which is this concept of just, it's kind of like a new ism, like socialism, capitalism, partnerism, like this new era that we're moving into is where we need to all be in partnership with each other, just like how nature works. Everything's in reciprocal relationship, and that's going to be the foundation for a new economy. So I love her work. She has a couple of great books. Those are the two I would recommend right now, like if you're interested in going deeper in this.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, this was great. We really appreciated it. We're kind of stepping into this space a little more, and it's just exploring ways to bring more sustainable actions into our business together. So yeah, thank you so much.
I love it. Yeah, thank you for being here and for asking the question. And that's what's cool about this too, is that I talk with a lot of people who are looking to do like sustainable businesses or help with the earth in some way, and to embrace this leadership style as well as that, like fully aligns everything, right? It's like it brings all of it into perfect alignment to like be in service of the earth or be in service of humanity, and also be in service to yourself. It's like there's all these shapes I want to make. They're just like all the same and all working together at the same time. So it's I'm really happy to hear from people who are in that world too. They're interested in embodying a different way of leading. Because what I don't want is that these sustainable businesses of the future are led by people who are going to be doing these same old ways of just trying to control the business and dominate the business. It's like, no, sustainable all the way.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions?
It doesn't look
All
like
right,
we have
well,
any more. Do you have anything
yeah,
to be like?
I'll put my email address in the chat here, and I'll put the link to the Facebook group if anybody wants to join. And then, yeah, feel free to reach out to me.
Yash just asked, what's the name of the second book that you had mentioned?
The Nature of Business and Regenerative Leadership are Giles Hutchins' two books. And then Riane Eisler has a bunch of books too. I haven't read them. I've only heard her speak, but The Chalice and the Blade is one of them that people love. And then actually another book that's really amazing is one called Reinventing Organizations, which talks about more on the organizational level. How do you get rid of management hierarchies and start to reorganize entire groups into pods and into ways that look and feel like a living community. It's really, really inspiring. So I would recommend that one too. I'll type it here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And I also love, like, you just, during quarantine, you're like, I want to look into this. And, you
yeah.
This is amazing. All right, well, if there's nothing else or no other questions to come in, guess we can say goodbye.
All right, thank you all. Thank you, Simran.
Okay,
Enjoy
all right.
your day.
Thank you all so much. This is going to be up on our YouTube and our Facebook page. I put the link to our co-working space in the chat, and also that's where you can see all the events. So yeah, I hope to see you guys in another event, and Mackenzie, I hope to see you soon.
Bye.
All right, bye.